all the participants please use the virtual background and fill the presence form we have sent in the chat box. A good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Dian Hutami Wahyudi from Postgraduate School ITB, and I will be the Master of Ceremony for this online workshop. A warm welcome to you all to the workshop JETS, Journal of Engineering and Technological Science 2022, Writing Scientific Manuscript Part 1. This workshop is dedicated to the students and lecturers so that they can improve their skills in writing scientific manuscript for publishing their research results in reputable scientific journal. This workshop organized by LPPM ITB and supported by the editorial board member of Journal of Engineering and Technological Science. Now, let us hear welcoming speeches from Head of Institute for Research and Community Service ITB, Dr. Yuli Setio Indartono. We would kindly invite Dr. Yuli to please share the speech and opening this workshop officially.
Thank you, Dian, Master of good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm very pleased to be here together with you to listen the lecture from Professor Prakash Thamburaja from Universiti of Kebangsaan, Malaysia. Thank you very much, Prof. Prakash.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
The topic today is quite important, how to translate your ideas into partial one paper. Thank you for the chat team, Journal of Engineering and Technological Science of ITB. I see Afri and Open College in Gunawan. Currently, our office, Institute for Research and Community Services, manage 5 journals currently. One of which has been the 2 journals ranked 2 in 2021 are the Journal of Mathematical and Fundamental Sciences and the Journal of Regional and City Planning. 2 other journals ranked quarter 3, namely the Journal of Engineering and Technological Sciences, ITB, and the Journal of ICT Research and Application. So, there are 5 journals in ITB. And then, of course, there are some journals also running by the faculty members. For the JET, I saw the data that every week, JET receives 10 new submissions with a fairly high rejection rate. In the quality is good. The JET has published 6 issues per year with 40 articles. So previously, the journal, the JET, has been in Q2 for 2 years in 2019 and 2020. And I believe Dr. Afri, Endra, and other colleagues in JET will increase again the quality of JET. Ladies and gentlemen, in my data, the level of publication is quite important to get the certificate. If we see the university in 100 of 100 World University ranking level has more percentage on quarter 1 journal, because the citation will come a lot from that paper published in the Q1 journal. Also in ITB, I see the data that our citation came a lot from the Q1 journal paper compared to Q2, Q3, and Q4. That's why only a number of publications is not enough. But we must send our paper to a respective journal, the Q1, Q2 journal. Then we can hope by using this strategy, we will get a lot of citation. Citation is figure so that how much our paper is used by other people in scientific way. That's why workshop today is quite important. How to publish into one thing. I believe Professor Prakash has a lot of experience and to share with us today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am officially open this workshop. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Yuli, for opening this workshop. Now, I would like to invite all the participants to open the cameras and use our virtual background. We will capture all of you for several minutes. Pak Yanto will take the picture.
Bapak Ibu, nyalakan kameranya. Oke, saya ambil halaman pertama. 1, 2, 3. Oke, halaman kedua. 1, 2, 3. Halaman ketiga. 1, 2, 3. Halaman keempat. 1, 2, 3. Halaman kelima. 1, 2, 3. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yanto, for taking the pictures. Now let's this event handled by our moderator today, Dr. Afriyanti Sumboja, one of Associate Editor of Journal of Engineering and Technological Science. Dr. Afriyanti, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dian. Before we start before Professor Thamburaja start the presentations, I will read his biography. Yeah. Professor Prakash Thamburaja is currently a professor at the Department of Mechanical and Materials Engineering at the National University of Malaysia, or Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. He finished his undergraduate degree at Imperial College of Science, Technology and Medicine in 1969, and then
1996.
1996. Sorry,
Please,
sorry.
I'm not that old. So.
1996, and then he continued his study at Master and Ph.D. at MIT, and he completed his Ph.D. at 2002. Yeah. Prior joining Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, he was with National University of Singapore from 2003 all the way until 2012. And then he was also, after that, he was a Principal Research Fellow at the Institute of Space Science at National University of Malaysia. And he's currently also a visiting professor at Department of Mechanical Engineering at the Texas A&M University. And Professor Thamburaja has published a lot of papers and with quite a number of citations as well. And he's also, we are very happy to have him in our editorial board at JETS as well. Okay, I think without further ado, let's pass the event to the Professor Thamburaja. Professor Thamburaja, the time and place is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the very kind introduction. It's indeed, let me just share my screen first, yeah, guys. Okay. It's indeed an honor to be. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's indeed an honor, for me to be here in this workshop today, and also to be a member of the editorial board for JETS. And it's a journal which is definitely going up, and hopefully, it will keep on going up, in terms of the stature and the quality of articles which are being published there. Yeah? So the title for my talk is basically, it's more to do with my research philosophy and practices. Yeah, my research philosophy and practices, and how to translate your ideas into Q1 papers. Okay, so what I want to do today is basically to share what are my research practices and how do I actually attack a research problem through certain philosophies that I've developed over the years. Yeah, like, as you keep talking to people and you're publishing things, you develop certain habits. Yeah, which if you keep on practicing and using these habits, they become something more second nature to you. Yeah, so it becomes like a research philosophy and a common practice that you actually adopt when you're actually approaching a research problem. And of course, the end goal is to translate these ideas or practices and your results into a paper. Okay, but what is important is to have the right philosophy and this and background before attempting to publish papers. Because I always believe that if you have the right attitude and the right philosophy, your research will come very easy to you. Yeah, so because this is something that you come naturally, like breathing. Yeah, so you shouldn't be laboring into to doing research. Of course, it's a labor. Research endeavor is a labor. But what I meant is, if you're doing it, you should be happy doing it. Yeah, and if you're happy doing certain things, certain practices, certain works, your research, I believe it will easier be translated to papers, and particularly good papers, because you are putting your heart and soul into it. Okay, so that's the topic of my presentation. Yeah, my research philosophy and practices, and how to use such practices to translate your ideas into a Q1 paper. Yeah, to top journals basically. Okay, so this is the basic outline of my presentation. So I will briefly describe first, people are always, like in this day and age, they always very concerned about university ranking systems and all that. Yeah, I mean, especially if you're a parent which are sending your child to school, you'll always naturally see, is it a good school? Is it highly ranked school? Because when I send my son or daughter there, I want them to be coming out with a good degree, and it's very easy for them to get a job either in industry or in research. So these things are very important. But there's actually a very important reason why university of ranking system is actually important for academicians as well. Yeah, so I will explain why university ranking systems are actually important for us too. It's not just for parents, it's for universities as well. Yeah, because a lot of funding is actually tied there too. Yeah, but more important than that, you will see where you as students come into play. Okay, and secondly, as part of this workshop, I will slowly have a segue from students and research into what a journal ranking indices, why a journal ranking indices is important. Okay? So, and also briefly explain what are the different type of journal ranking indices they are. Okay, and in particular, what makes a quarterly one Q1 journal a Q1 journal. Okay, so why are these journals considered top journals? Okay, so just a bit of a caveat. See, so Q1 journals, I mean, those are basically shuffling positions. Okay, so in other words, they change from time to time, but certain journals, they'll always remain classy. You know what I mean? So these are basically journals away from the borderline, Q1, Q2, Q2, Q3, and all that. Yeah. And in fact, there are also certain caveats that you should also be aware of. There are certain journals, particularly like society journals, which are not Q1 journals, but they are very high, a high reputation, yeah? Very high respect from a lot of people as well. Yeah? Things like Proceedings of Royal Society, those kind of journals, they have been around for 400 years. They are generally Q2 journals, like ASME journals, ASCE journals. They've been around for 100 years at least. But sometimes ideas take time to get accepted. Okay, so these journals, they have a very far-reaching vision. Yeah? So they don't look at immediate goal. They also look at far-reaching goals as well. Yeah. So we have to be a bit more careful sometimes. So we shouldn't just say, just because a Q1 journal is a Q1 journal, it's a good journal. Just because a Q2 journal is a Q2 journal, that doesn't mean it's not good. Okay, so you have to be very careful. So it takes time and practice. As you meet people, they will tell you what is good and what is generally not considered good. Okay, and then I will talk about basically from a person who was an author, and from a point of view of being a referee, which is very important. Okay, because I've been a referee for many years, for a lot of Q1 journals. So what are the general criteria for acceptance for articles in Q1 journals? So these are the kind of things that I will be describing about. And this is something that which is completely within your control as well. Right? You can actually ensure that your chances of getting published in a Q1 journal actually improve by following some of the tips that I'm trying to share you from a point of view of as an author, and it's a point of view of as a referee. Okay? Okay, so once we have already done with that preamble, so we have to, what I want to do is basically describe my research philosophy. Yeah? So, of course, the end product is the publication of the journal, but to publish the journal, there's a lot of background work that actually goes into it. Yeah. So, and I believe if you have a very uh, strong philosophy or a philosophy which has been tested with time, yeah, with practice and basically like sharpened like a tool, you will be basically get into a groove of where when you write something, you're automatically gearing it for a Q1 publication. So I don't want you guys to have the feeling that if I write something, it's like, is this good enough for a Q1 paper or not? So I want you to have that automatic feeling that okay, my work is already good enough, because I've done all the checkpoints. I've already considered a lot of issues, and of course I'm working in a hot field. I think my paper will be ready for submission to a Q1 journal. So I want it to be automatically ingrained in your mind rather than doubting yourself. Yeah. So that is why philosophy is very important. Okay? So and then from philosophy, you will have a certain writing methodology as well. Okay, because once you have your philosophy set for doing research, how do you begin writing a paper? In the sense, for actually any journal for that matter. So and this is my way of writing papers. So I'll share with you my methodology of writing papers. Okay. So once you have already submitted the papers, since all of it is done, what happens when the reviews come in? Okay. So actually, a lot of us think once the reviews come in, it's already done. Actually, it's not, because sometimes the reviews might be quite long as well. Yeah, I've seen some papers where the paper is like 4 or 5 pages, but the reviews are like 10 pages. Yes, this has happened before. In fact, even to me as well. So, if you're writing papers in like short letters type of journals, so just because your paper is about 4 pages or 5 pages long, that doesn't mean the review will be shorter. Yeah, it could be long as well. So how do you basically address some of these questions? And another thing is that if you don't get a very favorable review, what are the different steps that you can actually take to actually mitigate these issues and to resubmit it or to ask for another review? You can actually do that. Journals allow you to do that. Okay. And finally, I will conclude my workshop lecture today. Yeah. So just a disclaimer. So the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those mine and mine only. Yeah. So this is something that has worked for me. So, and I'm hoping that it'll also work for you. So if you want copies of these slides, I'll be more than happy to share it with y'all. And yeah, so don't say that, oh, Prof, I followed all this and it didn't work. Why? So, I hope it will work for you. Okay. So, and I'm always ready to give, tips and advice as well, offline as well. So please, we are more than happy like this. And this help which I'm giving you is basically without any strings attached. So I'm more than happy to help because you guys are new friends of mine and I like friends. Okay. So what best way of keeping friends by doing things for free, right? Okay, without further ado, so yeah, so let's briefly describe what are university ranking systems. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you guys are very familiar with university ranking systems, right? Things like the QS ranking systems and the Times Higher Education. And so these are some of the popular ones, yeah, the QS and PhD. But there's another popular one which I personally like. Yeah, this is called the ARWU. Yeah, so this ARWU ranking system is basically a ranking system out of China. I think it's by Shanghai Jiaotong University. So and they are quite rigorous, in terms of their criteria for ranking. Okay, so I'll tell you why I like them. So for when you're looking at the THE index, the research and citations part accounts for about 62.5. Yeah, so 5/8 of the percentage of weight of ranking. That's really high. Okay, 62.5% is very high. Okay, for QS is a bit lower. Yeah, they look at a lot of other things as well, diversity in faculty bodies, diversity in students, student to staff ratio. Those things are also quite important a lot for QS. It's not, I'm not saying it's not important for PhD, but the percentage is higher for QS. And for QS, about 20% of the citation counts, citations account for 20% of their weight of ranking. So that's of quite some, maybe about 3 years ago. I don't know whether they changed their methodology. But among these guys, these ranking systems, the most stringent of ranking in terms of citations and research related outputs is this ARWU, yeah, which accounts for 90%. It's really high. So in fact, you will see examples for example, there are some universities which are ranked highly in the QS or THE, will be ranked quite low in the ARW, yeah? And the opposite, like lowly ranked universities in the THE and the QS will be ranked quite high, in the ARW research rankings, yeah? So it's depends on the criteria for where the points are coming from. Okay, so just want you guys to be a bit familiar with the different types of ranking systems and where research and citations account for these citations, because these are basically directly influenced by the journal publications from the university. Okay, so this is where good publishing universities which are publishing in good journals will basically generally have a higher THE or QS or even ARW ranking. Okay, all right. So why is why are university rankings important? Okay, so as I was mentioning briefly, like a lot of parents and all that, when they're sending their children to school, they want their kids to go to good schools naturally, right? So that they'll come up with a good degree and they'll get a good job. Yeah. But from a university point of view, why is university ranking systems important? Yeah. So one thing is basically because of funding. Okay, because if you have good ranked universities, you get good funding, yeah, to do research. But more important than that is basically human capital. Okay, universities want to be highly ranked because that actually helps us to get good and brilliant students. Okay, so the higher the rankings of the university, the easier it is for them to attract good students. So it's important for us to be highly ranked because we want to get the best of the best students. Okay, so good students like from ITB, people will be clamoring for them, right? So we in Malaysia want to be highly ranked because then we can possibly get very good students from ITB, and other good universities in the world. So, yeah, particularly from India, China, and all that, so and so. Yeah, and then why is good students important? Very simple. So good students are actually very important. They're extremely crucial for the research programs. Okay, the students are basically the ones which are running the research program. Okay, they are doing the brunt of the work because they are working towards their PhD or their masters. Okay, so good students are extremely crucial for the research programs of universities. In fact, if you go to top universities, places like your Caltechs or your MITs or your Harvards, say a lot of the professors, they'll be quite busy, doing their own research and also writing grants and all that, especially in the US. Yeah, the clamor for writing grants is very high. Getting money is very important. So a lot of the research tasks, like the day-to-day tasks, are actually handled by the student himself. And if the student is good, the research program goes smoothly. So yeah, so unless you're unlucky enough to get caught with a micromanager like me, so typically I'm always on top of the students. So I don't manage more than 4 students or 5 students at a given time, because I kind of want to know what exactly the student is doing at all times. Yeah? Because I believe in getting your hands dirty as well. So I will do the coding, I will do the deriving of the equations and all that too. So depending on the professor. So yeah, so I'm a bit of a micromanager. So that's the unfortunate side effect of my personality. So okay, and finally, without good students, research activities will definitely suffer. So as much as we think we can be a standalone professor or not, without students, we won't be getting out enough journal publications per year and all that. Yeah. So students are extremely important. And it is our task to actually educate the students as well, yeah, for the betterment of society for the future. Yeah. So these students are the ones who are basically taking our philosophies and bringing them to the new world. So without good students, research activities the experiments, the simulations, and of course, most importantly, the journal publications will suffer as well. Okay, and sometimes there's some students who also who are basically good enough students. They have some input to writing grants as well. Okay, so but most importantly, journal publications suffer without good students. Okay, so that is the unfortunate side effects without students. So that is why university ranking systems are important, because the good students will come more to our university. Very important. Okay, apart from university ranking indices, there are also other important research indicators like journal ranking indices. Okay, so that is the whole goal for our presentation today. Okay, so they are basically just a brief preamble to students who are not familiar. What are journal ranking indices? Okay, so there are many different types of journal ranking indices which are used by universities and research institutes all over the world. Okay, so some of them you have to pay, things like the Web of Science, or World of Science, they call it, or Web of Science, ISI, which in my opinion is the most stringent of the journal ranking indices. Yeah, so not many journals compared to the SciMago, yeah, which is the Scopus basically, powered engine. Yeah? Excuse me. So SciMago is basically Scopus powered. Okay, so there are more journals which are listed in SciMago compared to ISI. So in other words, ISI is more stringent. Okay, and just like ISI, you also have like Q1, Q2, Q3 as well in SciMago as well, yeah? And they are not generally overlapping. Okay? Most of it is there, but some of it is like plus minus, yeah, because again, because there are more journals in SciMago, so the Q1 will be higher. Remember, Q1 means first quarter. So if you have 100 journals, the first 25 journals will be Q1, the second 25 journals will be Q2, the third quarter will be Q3, and the final quarter will be Q4, basically, yeah. So the more journals you have, the more Q1 journals you have. That's all. And one recent journal which is ranking indices which is completely free is the Google Scholar Index. Okay, in this case they don't do Q1, Q2. They have their own metric, yeah, to follow. So yeah, they don't break it down to Qs. They just have the highest impact factor for the journal and lowest impact factor in their citation count. Okay, so in UKM in our university we use the Web of Science database for evaluation purposes. Okay, so because we want to be as stringent as possible, so that is our preferred database for journal ranking indices. Okay, so the only downside for World of Science is you have to subscribe to it. SciMago is basically, I think it's free if I'm not mistaken, and their data is obtained from the Scopus engine. Okay? So for SciMago, yeah. And I think JETS is probably what Q2 or Q3 in SciMago if I'm not mistaken. So that's very good. Like that means you guys are doing something good. Like and it's going to only go up. So congratulations to all of you, for making this happen. Okay. Now, what actually makes a quarterly one journal a quarterly one journal? Okay, so there are also, of course, the rigorous definition of a Q1 journal is basically just statistics based. Okay, so if you have a very high impact factor, like and if it's basically the top 25% of the impact factors, like so remember there are two different types of impact factors. Yeah, there are a 2-year impact factor according to World of Science definition. There are a 2-year impact factor, which is also just called impact factor, and you also have the 5-year impact factor as well. Okay, in other words, like you're sort of measuring medium term, impact in this case. Okay, so just because your impact factor might be high, that doesn't mean your 5-year impact factor might be higher or as well. Yeah, high or high, same or higher as well. It could be lower too. In fact, the odd thing is if you look at a lot of nature-based journals, this Nature Publishing Group or Science, their impact factor, the immediate impact factor 2 years is actually very high, in the high 20s, sometimes 30s. But their 5-year impact factor might be lower, rather, not low, yeah, lower. So, but a lot of society journals, like Proceedings of Royal Society or ASME, SE, the 2-year impact factor must be lower. So there'll be Q2 journal, but their 5-year impact factor might be higher because what happens is generally the ideas become more accepted much later. That's basically it. So in other words, how hot the field is basically what the impact factor is measuring. So if the field is very hot, or the paper is publishing papers. Sorry, if the journal is publishing papers which the field is very hot, for example, machine learning is hot, so their impact factor will be high basically because they're publishing a lot of journals which are publishing hot topics, yeah, like very nice topics, okay, very current topics rather. So but things which are like very fundamental nature work, like deriving equations or balance laws or things which are very, very fundamental in nature, they might get accepted much later, because people need time to think basically, yeah, because it's not right in front of you. So you got to think deeply about it. So time and idea gets takes time to permeate, yeah. So the diffusion coefficient is kind of low. So yeah, but for nature-based articles or science, so the diffusion coefficient is very high, yeah. So it permeates the circle very fast, yeah. So because it's a sexy topic for that matter, okay. So the drive to publish in such journals are becoming increasingly important because it's a performance metric for researchers in our universities. Yeah? So for example, if you're looking at appraisals for universities, like for academic staff here, yeah, if they want to know whether you are, I guess, performing impactful work, so the easiest thing to do is to see whether you're performing or publishing in high impact factor journals, basically. Yeah. So this is from an academic point of view. Okay. So, and in fact, it doesn't even escape our students as well. For example, if for students who are interested in pursuing a career as an academician, so if you're publishing very high quality journals, like as a PhD student, so the chances of you getting a university job and all that are automatically higher. So there's no two ways about it. Unfortunately, that's the sad, that's the fact, and that's what it is. Yeah. So so it is important for student placements, like and as faculty members, and also it also drives the reputation of the university, like, up further as well. So if, for example, if your university is able to publish, papers in like science or nature, like top impact factor journals, so automatically, like, your the influence, like, of the university, like, in terms of research indicators are going to be high as well. Yeah. So they will have very good name in research as well. Yeah? Like top research universities and so on and so forth. Okay. However, the downside of it is there's only a handful number of upper tier Q1 journals. Okay. So depending on the field, so because it's by definition statistical, right? So, if you're top 25%, you'll be in Q1. That's all. And basically, like, these journals, particularly at the borders, they can either be Q1 or Q2 as well. Yeah. So what I hopefully want to impart to you guys is that the right philosophy to publish in those journals which are always Q1 and pretty much remain Q1 for as long as possible. Yeah, they're not at the border. So what differentiates those top tier Q1 compared to this Q1 journals at the border between Q1, Q2, and so on and so forth. Okay. So I hope, like, this lecture will sort of shed some light into what these Q1 journals are actually looking for. This top tier Q1 journals. Yeah? So that is what I want to impart to you guys. Okay. So these are basically the over the years, like, so I've been reviewing since I'm trying to think, like, even during my PhD days, I've started reviewing from 2000 till now. So that's about 22 years. God, that's a long time. So I've been reviewing articles for 22 years, and I've been also fortunate enough to review articles, like, in top 5% Q1 journals, top 10%. So these are basically, like, journals which are Q1, but, like, at a different strata. Yeah? So I'm lucky enough to be able to publish and to review articles which are published in this journal. Yeah. So the general criteria is actually not so probably different from other journals. Typically, they are reviewed by 2 or 3 referees. Yeah. Normally 2, but most of the time, like, now I've noticed that 3. Sometimes I've seen 4 or 5 as well. Society journals in society papers in general, they have about 4 reviewers. 4 reviewers. Yeah. So, 4 to 5. But for top tiered, like, Q1 journals, you are generally reviewed by 2 or 3 referees. Okay. What I notice is this, like, the bigger the professor's name, the lesser the number of reviews. Yeah. So it's so for us, like, we'll typically get about 3 reviewers. There's a reason for that. Okay. So they are basically the tiebreakers, the 3, because sometimes, like, you'll have one reviewer which really likes the work. Some guys, like, sort of nothing so groundbreaking. So they look at the third reviewer, like, so okay, what is the third reviewer saying? Like, is he yay or nay? So, so normally the third review is the tiebreaker, like, so unless if the bad review is extremely damaging or there's some, like, some fundamental issues with your paper, like, they will basically, like, sort of, like, won't look at what the third review is saying. So sometimes you can have 2 positive reviews and 1 bad review, and if the bad review is really bad, the editor might say that, hey, the paper is rejected on the grounds that it's, there's some issues with the review, with the work. Yeah. So, but if the review is the bad review is sort of, like, not very favorable, like, in the sense that, there's no very solid reason. Yeah? So what they will do is they look at the third review. So then the third review is quite good as well. Then they say, okay, you know what? Like, it makes my job easier. 2 out of 3 is basically majority, right? Like, like in parliament, like, it's enough for you to have a government there, right? So, to pass laws. So 2 out of 3 is generally okay, like, so okay. So, and in these Q1 journals, the reviews are meant to be very rigorous so that high standards are maintained. So in fact, like, I've seen sometimes, like, that the second round for the reviews, they won't ask the same person to review again, because they say that, hey, this person's review, it looks very cursory, like, I'm not going to count this person's review just because he said, oh yeah, the work is good, like, I'm not going to count the review because, like, it's not done in a very rigorous way. So a lot of the top Q1 journals, they will actually reject those type of very nonchalant type of reviews, yeah, which are basically, like, not very rigorous at all. So they will ask another person to come up with a rigorous review. Sometimes the editor might even do a review as well. So this, based on my knowledge, I've seen this. Okay. And these reviews are generally, like, they are experts in your field. So sometimes, like, you are required to give some names for reviewers in your field. Yeah. I mean, they will ask you to suggest, but just because you suggest certain names, that doesn't mean they'll follow it. Because sometimes I've also seen editors, like, they look at your publication profile as well. Like, okay, you've written papers. Hey, but you've asked a person to review your paper, but you published a lot with this paper, with this person, So I'm not going to take your advice and select this person as a reviewer. Yeah. So try as a person writing the paper. So this is to the academicians. So try to find experts in your field, which are generally like that you have not published papers with, so that they'll give a fair review. So that they know that you're not trying to curry favors by review basically. Yeah. So they normally look at that. Yeah, and of course they have to be generally experts in your field. Yeah? They're the big peoples in your field. Right? So generally, for acceptance to publish, the decision is normally unanimous. Most of the time, like all reviewers will have to say the paper is good or otherwise. Yeah. So if it's 2 out of 3, so they will see the level of the review. For example, if the second person, his review is not so good, it's not favorable, but he's got no good reason to reject you. So what the editor will do is normally they will say that, okay, I will also write a review for that paper, or they will send it to another person most of the time. So, most of the time they don't have time. So they'll look for another person to write the review, so that the decision will be unanimous. Because the second round you can actually neglect the review of the one of those guys as well, if the review is not good. So yeah, so typically for the acceptance to publish, the decision is normally unanimous. All of them have to say yes. Okay? And it's very rare that the journal editors would overrule the decisions made by the referees. Okay, so the editor is there only for extreme cases. Okay, for example, if there's not a very friendly exchange between the reviewer and the person who are writing the paper. So sometimes the journal editor will step in and take a stand there. So it's very rare, but it has happened before. Okay? So it is also my advice to editors in our chats. It's not just to be postman, just to send one review to another. So try to look at the reviews of the reviewers coming in as well. See whether the review is fair or not. Just because he says the paper is good or bad, just don't take their word for it. See why the person is saying the work is good or bad. So this is something that we can actually also adapt for judge too. Okay? So finally, the review process can take as little as 1 month to even 1 year. So society journals, they have gone to 1 year. Yeah. So letters and all that, like PRL, extreme mechanics letters, they can take as little as 1 month too. I've got one paper only, accepted under 1 month. One paper. That is when I was a PhD student. It never happened ever after that. So because being an MIT has its perks. So your boss is a big guy. So yeah, the paper got accepted in a month. But after I became a professor in my own set, it was generally about 3 months. On average, it's about 3 months. Yeah? So it's not so bad. So okay, it's not so bad. If you have any questions, you can always ask me anytime, or you can also save it to the end. Yeah? So I'll leave it to you guys. Just Dr. Sumboja, you just let me know, if there are any questions, and I can answer it anytime. So not a problem. Okay. Okay. So as a referee, what are the important things that we always look for? Okay. So in general, there are just a few things. Okay. So one is basically novelty of the work. Okay. If you want to publish in a Q1 journal, your work has to be novel. Okay. It has to be novel. It has to be current. It has to be original. And there also must be some amount of rigor in it. In other words, when you actually if you're a mathematician, or if you're basically working in the field of mathematics, there's some rigorous definition and derivations of the models. If you have a computational procedure, you explain how the flow chart of the procedure is. You just don't say oh, we've written a code, and the computer code is put in MATLAB, or whatever, some final element software. So don't do that, so they'll all want to see the flow chart, what is the starting process, what is the input variables, what are the dependent variables, what is the first step of the calculation. So you can put it in a flow chart. So if you're working in a computational field, and if you're working in an experimental field, so they want to see how careful you are when you're preparing the samples, how much of care you took when you actually doing the experiments. For example, just don't say that, oh, I've done a simple tension experiment and this is the stress strain curve. You want to do 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or 5 and to show like a spread of data. So show that what, I'm getting repeatable results. And the results are not an anomaly. And this is particularly true if you're working in with new materials. Okay, so if you come up with a new material, for those who are in material science, don't just do one experiment, like, so, do a couple and show all the results, show the spread of the data, so, and like, show that, okay, within a certain range, these features are repeatable, like, the peak stress, the failure strain. So these things are repeatable. People want to see care when you've done your work. Yeah. So that's basically it. And of course, interpretation of result is very important as well. Okay. So don't just say, okay, the stress strain curve, like, is shown in figure 1. Don't do that. So, okay. So explain, okay, it starts like, the starting point, like, it's at this point. And when you apply certain load, we can see elastic deformation. So if it goes above certain thing, like, we'll see a non-linear response. And then when it reaches a peak stress, it will drop. So, and this behavior is repeatable over like 5 different experiments. So they want to see you interpret the results as well. Okay. So that is extremely important. Don't just show a photo or a figure and just say, okay, the setup for the experiment is shown in figure 1. So do a bit of explanation, like, so care was taken, like, when we were preparing the sample, we've graded it with this kind of, a sandpaper of this fine microns. So those things are actually very important. Okay? And these are some things that you must explain in the paper. So, if you cannot explain it in the main body, you can always write it in the appendix as well. For example, some papers, like, they have a certain limitation of pages, right? So you can always put it as a supplementary material, or you can also put it as an appendix too as well. Okay. So that is up to you. Okay. And the last, but definitely not the least, is language. So this is, I cannot emphasize this important enough. Yeah, this is extremely important because you can have a brilliant idea, like, you can come up with, like, the next best things in sliced bread, but it can be completely undone if you are not able to explain it carefully, and if you're using bad grammar, people will get turned off. So by that, yeah, so I've seen so many times, like, a good research paper with really, really nice results, like, they can be rejected because of bad English or bad explanation, bad grammar, no sentence structure, no flow of the article, so those things are something that you always must take care of, yeah, when you're writing a paper. So and this is something that comes over with practice. That's all. Yeah? So nobody is born with it. We have to take a lot of time and care, like, to be able to write papers properly. It's an art. A lot of it is also art. Of course, there's also science part to it as well. But excuse me, there's also an artistic part to it as well. Okay? So very good paper can be undone with bad grammar and bad explanation and bad English. So why is it important? Okay, so the reason why it's important is because we must all remember one thing: referees are doing this for free. It's a review service. Okay, so this is done without any compensation. Okay, so if we are already taking time out from our busy schedule to review papers, the least we expect is basically the person who's writing the paper has put a lot of care in conveying the ideas. Okay, and this only can be done if they are writing it properly. Okay, because we are doing this as a duty towards the enhancement of our fields. So to do that, we want things to be as done as easily as possible. Okay, so we want to make sure that the sentence structure is nice. When we're reading it, it's not like bad grammar or the spelling is all wrong. So we are humans as well, no? So we'll get turned off by it, and we're like, my God, like, I'm just going to reject this paper based on bad grammar, like, and that is done many times. Because in fact, a lot of reviewers, like, template, they'll ask, what is the grammar like? Is that significant changes need to be made, like, with the English and explanation, and papers get rejected just because of that. Yeah? So important. Yeah. So take time to write nicely. It's very, very important. Okay. So, and the other thing is a referee, what we look for as well is, like, normally when we write our reviews, we want to ensure that all our reviews, all our comments actually, like, addressed sufficiently. Yeah, must be considered. So, so as when you're writing and when you're actually, like, rebutting, writing a reply to the reviews, make sure you answer each and every question they ask you, even though it could be a silly question. Okay. Remember, it could be silly to you because you are the master of your research, but it could not be silly to the referee or the reviewer because they are not, they don't know the exact nitty-gritty aspects of your work. Yeah, so they might think that it's something very profound, but it could be very trivial to you. Just explain it nicely. Okay, even if it's a trivial point, you can actually explain it and say, like, oh, this is actually considered in this sections, and it's explained here. Like, the review can be, like, can refer to the answer to this question as well here, or you can also repeat the answer in the reply to the reviewers as well. Okay, so one unofficial tip I can give you If you have a lot of yellow, highlights in your revised manuscript, that also kind of looks good. That looks like as though you have modified it a lot. So, I mean, this is very unofficial. So, I mean, it helps you in some way. Yeah, it looks like you spend a lot of time reviewing or revising the manuscript. Okay, but of course, please answer the questions of the reviewers. Okay, so these are the kind of things that we look for. Okay, novelty, originality, language. Okay, and basically, make sure that our comments always address, no matter how, because we always know what we sent you guys. We can check to see whether, hey, this person didn't answer this question. So what are they trying to hide? So automatically we'll say, okay, this person is not being forthright. I have to reject the paper, on these grounds. Yeah, that is entirely possible. Okay. So that is basically all the preambles, so what are the things that we look for as a reviewer and a referee? Yeah. So, but finally, the most important thing, that we need to do is to come up with the right philosophy. Okay, so and over the years, I believe, this is something that came through trial and error. Okay, so there's no quick fix for this, and a lot of this philosophy is actually developed by publishing and also talking to different other researchers, my own advisor, other professors in other universities. So I was also fortunate enough to spend 2 years as a visiting professor, and I'm still a visiting professor at Texas A&M. So I have a lot of friends there which we communicate with, and I always try to rake their brains, to find out what is your research philosophy. So what drives you to do research and publish? Yeah? So and this over the years, this is something that I've sort of accumulated and tried to polish over time. Yeah, but basically it all boils down to 6 important points. Yeah, of research philosophy. Yeah, one is basically passion for research, which is the most important point. So if you're not passionate in what you're doing, if you don't, if this is not the line for you, so then find something else to do. Okay, so yeah, because if you want to do good research, you gotta have passion for it. So there's no two ways about it. So don't do research for the sake of just doing it. You got to be passionate. Okay, and secondly, how thorough is your approach? You got to be basically thorough in your methodology. So when you're coming up with a certain research approach, you got to be thorough. Yeah, so you got to be prepared to explain how the thoroughness that you've taken in doing your work in the paper. Okay, so that is very important. Okay, so don't just say that I've done FEM simulations, I performed some experiments. So we know you've done all that. We can see the graphs and the results. So explain a bit more what you've done. So we want to see some thoroughness in your approach. If you're deriving models, you got to be mathematically sound as well and rigorous. And the third point is always being current in your knowledge. Okay, so in other words, be always current in your literature knowledge. Yeah? So the only prescription for that is to keep on reading. So, excuse me. Okay, so the more you read about your type of work in the literature, the more you know what are the action items to take, what are the caveats, what are the research problems. Yeah, so these are the kind of things that you only can get through reading. That's all. Okay, what are the hot topics? So it's important to read. The fourth point is basically on communicating, with other researchers. Okay, so find out what other people are working in your same field thinking about. So this is quite true. This is an advice I could give for academicians, basically. Yeah, students to a certain extent, but this is more useful for academicians. Of course, students can always communicate with their advisors, and sometimes the advisors may not have all the answers to the students' questions, because at the end of the day, the students will be the experts in their field. Yeah, so the advisors can always communicate with other experts, and find out what are their thoughts on certain things. Yeah? So that is very important. Communicating with other experts in your field, either through email or going to conferences and so on and so forth. Okay. And the fifth point is something that I've debated a lot, but I think it's also very important. Sometimes also I believe it's actually perfectly fine to work alone sometimes. In other words, writing your own papers. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, just because you do that, writing a couple of papers, single author, in your career, doesn't make you doesn't make you not a team player, basically. Okay, so in fact, it's the opposite. It shows that you can actually you're self-sufficient. You can actually generate your own ideas and do work by yourself. Yeah, it's I used to be able to do that when I was a junior faculty member, when I had a bit more time. So I wish I had a bit more time to start doing this as well. Yeah? I want to start writing back, single author papers and all that too. Yeah. So yeah, so this is something I perfectly enjoy doing, yeah? And I think that it's okay to work alone sometimes. And finally, yeah, so I want to talk about a different type of queue. Okay, we're talking about like quartiles and all that, but there are also two different type of queues which are very important when you're talking about publishing. Yeah, one is quality and one is quantity. Okay, it is in an ideal world is always it's good to all publish a lot of journals in very high quality paper, lot of papers in high quality journal, but it's not very easy, yeah, because like coming up with ideas and all that takes time, yeah. So if that is the case, which is true for most people, the most important queue in these two queues is the quality part. Okay, I always put it for quality is the most important queue there. Yeah? Quantity, it can happen, but this is completely within your controls. You want to ensure that you have a high quality publication, because those are the papers that will stand the test of time. Okay, people will read it years from now. Okay, so and you want that your name to always echo in the halls of science. Yeah? So in fact, like when you're looking at people who are basically getting awards, like for their research work, a lot of the times you'll see that they have very high number of quality papers rather than quantity of papers. Okay? So generally, the high quality papers are the people who are publishing high quality papers are the one that win medals, like, they win research awards. Because the quality of the work is something profound, and it stands the test of time. Okay. So yeah, I know I'm going slightly late, but it's not a problem, right, Dr. Sumboja? You guys are okay, right? Okay, good. So it's okay. Once I start talking, I get carried away. So it's okay. It's good. All right. So okay. So point one, passion for research. Okay. So they are basically. So as I was mentioning previously, so it is first very important to enjoy what you're doing. Okay. So this is very, very important. So because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it cannot be translated into papers. Okay. And if you enjoy what you're doing, you'll automatically be good in performing it. There's no doubt about it. There's no two ways about it, because your heart and soul is in it. Yeah, remember, it's very, very important to have passion. Yeah? So my favorite example is basically using these examples of Ben Franklin, Thomas Edison. So these people, they're not even educated in the conventional sense, like you and me. Yeah, they don't have degrees and all that, but they're so passionate about their research and discoveries. They actually are they've done a lot of very useful things for society. Yeah? So Edison had the light bulb, Ben Franklin, the bifocals and all that, which are used till today. Yeah? And they don't have bachelors of engineering or anything, yeah? But their passion drove them to be good scientists. Yeah. So people like Leonhard Euler and all that. I mean, you learn about Euler, and I mean, these people are not educated in the conventional sense. Yeah? And in fact, Euler became blind towards the end of his life, and his ideas are still used until today. Yeah. So you have to admire such people. Yeah, their passion is what drove them to achieving this greatness. Yeah? Okay. So in my opinion, this career is a very satisfying prospect. The greatest example is me, because I've never worked in industry. I've always worked in a university. Okay. So because I've always been in the research field. So in my opinion, it's a very satisfying prospect. In fact, I don't want to go and work in industry. I'm very happy working in the research field. Okay. Okay. How about the research approach? Okay, so one thing I cannot emphasize more is basically it's very important for a researcher, especially a young researcher, to be absolutely on top of his skill set. So if you're working on a mathematics, more on mathematical projects or competition projects, you need to know things in and out. Yeah. So where do the equations come from? What are the limitations for the equations, for example? And for example, if you're working in a computational mechanics domain, so don't treat it as just a black box. Know what the final element program is. What are the governing equations? How do you assemble the final element equations? So those are kind of things you need to do before just pressing run or something. Yeah? So take the time to actually know all these things as well, yeah? Because they can also be useful for you during your Viva as well. So you won't pass your Viva if they ask you how did you do your simulation? Yeah, I just press run on the final element program and it gave me a result. They're like, okay, that's so there's something really wrong here for a PhD student to do that. Yeah, and most people referees, when they see that in a paper, they'll be like, my God, I think you're just using it as a black box. So I don't think you put enough thoroughness in your approach. Okay, it's very important. So these are the examples of basically how you need to be thorough in different aspects. For example, if you're looking at a theoretical aspect, you should know how the equations are derived. If you're looking at a computational method, you need to know about the computational procedure, how the equations form. And if you're working in experiments, also how much care you took when you're preparing the sample. Did you do enough sample, sample, domain, how many different samples did you do? Is it statistically relevant? So all these kind of things are quite important as well. Like what are the error bars? So you need to do all that too if you're working on an experimental project. Okay? So these things are important, and your advisor will ask them. And more importantly, papers will also look for that. So, okay, third is basically on literature survey. Basically, this is a very important part of conducting research. Normally, most advisors will ask the students to do a literature survey when they're first getting to know the research topic. And one advantage of doing that is because you can always write like a literature survey paper, like a survey paper, an overview paper. Yeah. So the students can publish a paper like like a literature survey paper, like a review paper they call it, right? So and that is something that you can, it's a notch on your belt basically. So in other words, the students will have a paper before they start the rigorous part of their work. Right? They can have a survey paper or literature survey paper overview. Okay, so it's very, very useful to do that. So, and in fact, review papers get a lot of citations as well because people will read your review papers. Okay. With that said, in my whole career, I've only published one review paper, and it's still, in press. So it's not only last year only I've written one review paper in my life, and it's not easy doing it. Yeah? So it's trust me, it's not easy. Okay, I sort of stay away from it. So yeah. So the reason why you need to do literature survey is because this is where you can see where all the hot topics are. Okay, so these are all the where people are focusing attention on. Okay, so and from there you can see what are the problem statements with the current research areas, and this is something that you can use to drive your own research. And most normally the Q1 journals are always the journals that are addressing this hot topic. Yeah? That is why the impact factors are high, because this is very relevant in the next couple of years. Okay, so it's still hot. So, okay. Q1 journals, they're always looking for publishing works which are based on hot topics, okay? Because they want to remain current as well. They want their impact factors to still remain. That's why. Okay. And another thing that is important why you need to read is because you can always find applicability of your work in other fields as well. Okay. So this is very important. So just because you're a mechanical engineer and you're working on mechanical engineering topics, that doesn't mean your ideas are not relevant in another field, like electrical engineering or civil engineering. That's not true. In fact, a lot of my very nice ideas that I've worked in my research topic, I got it from electrical engineering, like how they solve equations and all that. So, like circuit theory and all that. I've used some of their work in my work too. Okay. Sorry, I hear some echoing. So, okay, yeah. So basically, yeah, and in fact, it's also very nice for you to publish papers in another field as well, because people from outside your field might be also receptive to new ideas as well. They're seeing that as you advancing a topic of interest as well. So keep that in mind. Okay? And the next point is communicating. Okay, so it is very important for scientists, students, or academicians to communicate with your peers as well, because you will know that by communicating, you will know that you are actually not reinventing the wheel. So you might come up with a nice idea. You'll be like, wow, this idea is so profound. Then you talk to your colleague, after 3 or 4 months later, finds out that another paper in that same area that has been published before. So you wasted 3-4 months, doing this. You see? So if you have something new, that you think which is quite profound, try to talk to other persons in your field, that you trust, that hey, I've come up with this way of solving this equation. Do you think you've seen something like this? So they might say no or yes. Yeah? So either way will help you. Okay. So the other reason why it's also very useful to communicate with other researchers, it is because if you make an effort to contact them, they will think that, hey, this person thinks highly of my work. So I feel happy that a person is actually trying to communicate with me. And they think my work is very important. That is why they're calling me to find out what my opinion of their work is. You see? And it also enhance their citations which go along, because there's some relevance for my work to you. See? So it will also help others, and they will also know what is the state of the art. That is why I really like to be on PhD committees as well, because you can see what is the latest research trends your friends and all that are working as well. Yeah? So you can learn something too. Okay. And there is no substitute for communicating, because nowadays, communicating is free. You can do WhatsApp, you can do Skype, Google Talk. There's so many different avenues for communicating. So there's no excuse in this day and age not to communicate with somebody, like, even though it's like overseas, So since I was telling you, like, I'm a visiting professor, like, in Texas A&M. So I find time, like, to talk to my friends over in Texas A&M. So it'll be night there, it'll be day here, vice versa. That's all. So you can always communicate with people at no cost nowadays. And if there are means which are, like, available to you, try to attend international conferences. Okay. So here you'll get a lot of ideas and a lot of latest ideas on what, like, what people are working on, so that you can also use these ideas and work on it and publish in your Q1 journals. Okay. So because these are the people who are going to be the reviewers as well for your work. Okay. So if they see that you have actually attended their work and you have cited some of their work and all that too, and you're working on a very hot topic, so the chances of you publishing in a Q1 journal is definitely higher. Okay. So, and that is only something that you get if you know what are the latest trends. And by going to international conferences, you will be able to see what's in store for you. So new research ideas, new directions, and so on and so forth. Okay. Okay. So this point here is might be relevant for you and might not be, but to me, I think it's very important aspect of my personality and philosophy. Yeah. So we know nowadays that most discipline research nowadays are conducted in a group environment, and it's also multidisciplinary, right? So in nature. Yeah. So the chemical guy might be working with a mechanical guy. A chemistry guy might be working with a electrical engineering guy. So it's very multidisciplinary. You cannot do everything. Yeah. But sometimes I believe, like, there's still a lot of very important things that you as a researcher, a student, or a faculty member can do. Is like, there are certain things that in your field of interest that are still not answered yet. Yeah. So this is important for you to go back, to take a step back and basically try to solve some of the fundamental issues that are still persisting in your field as well. Yeah. So and I believe that the way to do that is through independent study. So this is where, like, you have a lot of experience. Like, you can basically summon all your wealth of resources that you have and experience accumulated over the years, and you can also start to learn new skill sets, like, to perform meaningful research in that area. Okay? So this is a very important thing, like, and this is something that is in our culture too as well. Like, I think a lot of the top gurus and all that, the gurus, they will go to a cave to meditate, right? So that is because they're basically, they want to be alone, left alone to think about, like, things. Yeah. So over, like, and to reset their mindset and come up with new, solution tools, skills, or even new fields for that matter. Yeah. So in fact, like, if you notice, most great researchers in the world, they have published their seminal work through their independent work. People like Einstein, Gauss, we talked about Euler. So these are the people, like, Landau, Lifshitz, like, So a lot of these seminal papers are basically papers by, it's not Euler and co-workers, or Einstein and co-workers, or Newton and co-workers. It's only either Newton, Einstein, or Euler. So there's a lot of things to be admired by the way people do research back in the day. Yeah? So I still believe there's a lot of relevance to that even in this day and age as well. Okay. And actually, the reason why I cannot emphasize this more is because working alone is actually important for young faculty members as well. You know why? For young faculty members, normally if you keep on publishing with others, with your advisors or like your co-workers, it's very difficult to sometimes know in that paper who did what. But if you're writing a single author paper, they know exactly all the work is done by you. Basically, every aspect of the paper is written by you. All the work is done by you. Okay. And it is important for promotion as well. They can see that, hey, this person is able to work by himself and publish top Q1 journals by himself. Okay. So there's no point in holding him back for his promotion or something. His case is clear cut. Okay. So sometimes, like, for promotion committees, like, they look at a lot of papers where you're actually able to publish top Q1 journals as an independent author. They will say this person he has it in him or her to be a professor. Yeah. So he can work independently. Okay. That's why I think it's important to put here. Okay? And finally, yeah, like the quality over quantity debate, like, so never get carried away by numbers game. Okay. So for example, like, if you're students, like, if you look at, and this is very normal, because I've seen it as a student, I went through it as well. You look at your other, like, friends, like, working with another professor. Hey, man, that guy's published like 10 papers a year. Man, I'm struggling to publish even one. Man, okay. So don't be discouraged by that. So, I mean, just because a person publishes 10 or 20 doesn't make him a better researcher than a person is publishing one. Okay. Remember, because it is sometimes very difficult to publish one Nature paper, with an impact factor of 30 versus 30 papers with an impact factor of 1 or something. Okay, it's much easier to publish low impact journal papers compared to that one Q1 in Nature or Science or JMPS or whatever. Yeah, so your respective fields. Yeah, so and normally when you're looking at passing through a PhD committee or want to be a faculty position person, they want to look at how many high impact quality journals you have, not the number of papers you have. Okay, so that is very important. So the reason for that is basically by looking through the literature. So I can see basically some researchers who have only published about 120 papers over 50 years. So that's an average of 2.5 papers, 2.4 papers a year, and yet they have countless of medals. Okay, so the example is actually this guy is actually my advisor. Yeah, it's maybe now is about 140 papers. Yeah, so more about 50. Yeah, about 50 years already. So he's And this other person here is actually my committee member for my PhD. So he's only published about 70 papers for 70 years. That's even lower clip, like 1.75 per year. And he's got like ASME medals and because they looked at the quality of his work, and the quality of his work, made sure that he deserved this recognition and medals. Okay? So yeah, it's never all. They'll always look at the top quality journals that you have, not the number of papers that you have. Okay? It's very important for students to remember that. Okay? Is the quality of papers which is most important, not the quantity. Okay, if you can get both, that's great, but it's very rarely both. You either get one or the other. Okay, right. So now that I've shared my philosophy, so now based on that, I can actually provide some steps on how I do my writing of articles. Okay, so these are basically 5 steps that I have. So these are the different steps. Providing details around a new idea. How do you organize your ideas? So then we're talking about proofreading is very important. And then sometimes once you're done working on a paper, you'll be so saturated, you want to take a step back. You want to take a break. You have a break. And finally, we want to choose a journal and submit your article. So how do we do that? Okay. So these are the different type of steps that I normally take when I'm writing a paper. Okay. Okay. So step 1. Excuse me. How do you provide details around a new idea? Okay, so assuming that you've done your literature survey, you've read and talk to your advisor as well. You have a very nice idea and you feel like, now I want to share it with the rest of the world. Okay, so the world needs to see my ideas. You're ready to share it through a paper or a conference proceeding. Okay, so firstly, before embarking on your paper, make sure you understand what makes your idea special. Okay, so why is it special and novel? Is it something that people have already done? What makes it really novel? So it's too good to be true. So make sure you double check it with your literature survey and talk to people. So convince yourself that your idea deserves to be written up as a journal article. Remember, it's no point just writing a journal article to be published, because you don't want to pollute the environment. Okay, so I believe writing journal articles is also we're contributing to some pollution as well, pollution of ideas. So just because you have an idea and if that doesn't mean you need to share it. It could be a bad idea. So don't pollute the literature basically. So with the bad ideas. So if you don't think the idea is good and people say, you know what, I don't think this is worth writing up. So maybe you should take a step back and think how to make your work better. So, okay, don't just write a paper for the sake of writing. So okay, that's very important. Okay. So once that you have convinced yourself, you need to start filling out details around your idea. Okay, so with robust analysis. So for example, if you have a theoretical model, you have to basically explain how the equations are come up. So always start with that main part of your work. Yeah. So for example, if you have a paper, right, you have your abstract, your introduction, your methodology, then your results and simulations, and then your conclusion, right? The most important part of your paper is what you write first. For example, if you've derived a new mathematical model, so talk about that in your methodology, so derivation of the mathematical model. Or if it's a new computer scheme, computational scheme, so you talk about, okay, a new scheme for performing high performance computing or something like that. Okay. So the main part of your paper or your main idea is where you start your paper from. Okay? That is very important. Okay. Because that's the thing that you are contributing to the literature. Okay. So you start off with the main part of your work or your contribution basically. Okay. So it is also important to carry out your work to the fullest capacity. So of course, there's a place where you stop. Yeah. So leave no stone unturned. In other words, if you have your idea there, ask yourself, is this correct? Is this good enough? The explanation, if it's not can I make it better? Always try to answer ask the question from a perspective of a person that doesn't know your work, even if it's trivial. Yeah. So put in as much details as possible. If it's like basic stuff, you can always say, I refer to this paper for basic equations, which it's not something that you've developed, like somebody else has developed. You can say for details, regarding this part of the paper, refer to this other paper, which talks about that part of it. Always spend more time on your work, what you have done. Okay? So and always question yourself, what is lacking in your analysis or what's lacking in your results, that will make and then automatically make you think, how to make your paper better. That's all. Okay. So always question yourself. Okay. It's very important. So this is how you flesh out the details of your main part of the paper. Okay. Right. Start doing that. Okay. So just to follow up, so again, to start writing up, you always first compose a section which contains the main part of your work. Okay. So if it's a new theory or a new computational scheme or a new experimental setup, so you start with that, because everything else basically gets filled out from that part. Yeah, that's the main part of the tree. That's the bark of the tree, the trunk of the tree. Okay. So once this is done, you should write the next section on the analysis. So what are the results and the interpretation of the results? Okay. So these are the main, maybe section 4 or something, right? So always start with the middle part of the paper, typically section 2 or 3. Yeah. And then section 4 is when you interpret the results. Yeah? 3 or 4. Okay. When you start interpreting the results. Okay. And after that, you should write up the conclusion section, because that's basically what have you done? What have you contributed? What is the new thing about your work which people have not done before? So you do a conclusion section. Okay. So that's typically your section 4 or 5 typically. Okay. So yeah, up to you, depending on how many sections you have. Okay. So you start off with the main part of your work, which is the your theory or your simulations or your schemes or your experimental setup, and then you talk about the interpretation of your results, and then you do a conclusion. Okay. So once this is done, you're happy there, right? So now you start to write the introduction section. So this is where you build up the literature survey part, and then you talk about the research gaps. So what is the flow of your articles and what do you want to do in each section? So because you've already written all the main sections, right? So you know what to write in the introduction part towards the end of it as well. Okay. So the section 2 talks about the model derivation. Section 3 talks about the computational scheme. Section 4 talks about the interpretation of the results for these experiments that we perform, and we conclude and provide directions for future work in section 5. So something like that. Yeah. So this is where the information comes in your introduction as well, towards the end of your introduction. Okay. So you also do your literature survey and all that in the introduction section or section 1 typically. Okay. So once that is done, of course, you have all your acknowledgements and all that. The final thing that you write in your paper is your abstract. The reason why is very simple. Remember, the abstract summarizes your whole paper within 1 page at most, sometimes a bit more, right? So it is the most difficult thing to write is your abstract, because you want to summarize what all you have done in that paper in that 1 page. So you always write that the last, because now you have all the information in your paper to be able to give you the bullet points to write your abstract, okay, or the material to write your abstract. So the last thing you do is your abstract, okay. So methodology, schemes, interpretation of results, conclusion, intro, abstract. So that is how I write my papers. Okay? So until now, I follow that formula. Okay. So once you have done writing your paper, you're very happy. So read your paper from start to from front to back. So read it from as thoroughly as a few times. Give it to your either if you're a student, you can give it to your friends to read. Or if you're an academic person, you can give another professor in your department or something to read it. Yes, the reason why you want to read it is because remember, so when we were starting to write the paper, we did it in a very Frankenstein way, right? We start with section 3, 4, 5, and then went to 1. Conclusion. Then we went to section 1. Then we went to abstract. Yeah, so it's all kind of choppy, right? But you want to read it through again to fine tune the paper and to make sure that the paper flows nicely. Okay? It's very, very important. Okay. So if you're going from one section to another, there must be a segue in which, okay, in the next section, I'm going to discuss, how this computational scheme is developed. Then you go to the next section. There must be a segue to the next session, and the transition should be as seamless as possible. Okay. So that is basically what you need to do. Okay. So whenever possible, use simpler words to express the content of the word. No, there's no point using bombastic words unless it is absolutely necessary. Okay, because you don't want the reviewers to waste time going to look for a, on his computer, what is the meaning of this word, so you don't want them to and waste time, looking. They're already doing a service to review your papers, right? So use as simple words as possible, get straight to the point, okay? Unless if it's no choice, okay? And finally, try to send your article to experts in the field which you personally know, okay? So for obvious reasons, okay? So, somebody that you can trust, so that, they can also give you, they'll be trustworthy, and they also give you some feedback or valuable advice on how to make your article better, And if they've substantially improved your article, then you can include them as well, as a co-author as well. Of course, you ask them, So so because these are basically people that has contributed to your work, and if they have done so, then you can add them to your name. But if they're not done so, it is also good that you've actually sent it to them, because they could be potential reviewers as well. So take into account their comments and basically put it in your paper as well, by citing some of the relevant works that they're asking you to do, or considering different points of view, okay? Because if they read they could be also reviewing your paper as well. So it's so something that is very useful for you to do as well. Okay, so finally, once you have done, you've all these things which are done, you send it to your friend to read. So take a break from your work, So I mean, so if you're a student, work on a different aspect of your project. Because PhD students, they're always busy, right? So take a break and work on different aspects of the project. If you're a faculty member, just work on a different paper or something, or work on a different, do something differently. So stay away from the paper for about a week or so. There's a reason for that, so that you don't get so bored. From a human perspective, you're doing the same thing over and over again. You're telling yourself, man, do I have to see this paper, stare at this paper again for another 1 or 2 weeks? I'm sick and tired of it, man. If you see the same thing over and over again, you cannot find something wrong with it. It's very used to it. Yeah. So break the chain of thought, go and do a different part, write a different paper, or work on a different project or something. You have a lot of work, I'm sure. So, yeah. So you actually might. The reason for that is after 1 or 2 weeks, when you go back to your paper, you can actually see, hey, this flow of this article is not. It has happened to me many times. I've seen, hey man, this part of this section, I didn't explain it properly. I thought it was okay back then, but now it seems a bit jarring. So maybe I can make some minor amendments to the derivation, or make it nicer or more seamless. And make the sections flow in more easily. So I want to make sure things are done. Sound a bit better. So this is where you can make minor or major changes to the flow of the article. Yeah? Your work is already done, but you want to make the paper readable, because Q1 papers, they want to make sure to see that the flow of the article is nice, so it's not choppy. It's very important to publish to make sure that your flow of the paper is very nice and seamless, because it looks like you're very methodical in your thinking and you're very thorough in your writing as well. Yeah? So Q1 articles, if you see, they are very, very nicely written. It's very important. Okay. And flow is a very important part, and grammar as well. Okay? So if you do get some pointers from your experts, then you can start augmenting your script as well for that. Okay? Yeah. So now your paper is set. Now you want to submit your paper. Okay. So what are the things that you need to do? Okay. So one of the things that you need to do, first, you need to know whether your work is specific or more general in nature. Okay. So there are a lot of journals which are they'll only address certain specific things. You can look at the aims and their scope. Okay, so tally it with the keywords of your publication. Okay, so for example, normally when you write a publication paper, you have a certain keywords, right? So see if these keywords are matching with a lot of the keywords in that particular journal. So then you know this particular journal is the relevant journal for you to submit your journal to. So, you will invariably find a Q1 journal which all the keywords that you have. So few of them. Also Q2, Q3, and so on and so forth. Okay, there are a lot of repeating words. They're not unique to a journal. Okay, so look at the keywords of your research paper compared to the keywords of the journal, and find the Q1 journal that basically sort of fits your fancy in that sense. So and send it to you. Okay, so and don't be second guessing yourself. You that's why I always say that you have to believe what your idea is worth selling, right? Remember the first part of the philosophy, convince yourself that your work is good. So that you have done your work thoroughly, and it's there for the world to pay attention to. Yeah. So you be confident with the ideas. So that is part of philosophy and training, and you can see where it relates to submitting your journal article. So don't always say that, oh, it's a Q1 journal, I'm not so confident. I don't think my work is good enough. Just send it. What is the worst that can happen? You know? Worst can happen. You just get rejected, and you can see the points for rejection as well. Sometimes some journals say, "Oh, it's not part of the scope." Like, you know, if that's the case, then you can always write a rebuttal saying that, no, I don't believe what you're saying is true. It's okay. I won't send my paper to you guys again, you know, for whatever reason, you know. But sometimes you'll even get good reviews as well. So then they say the work is not suitable for publication in this journal because of these points. You can actually use these points to better your manuscripts, and you can resend it back to the same journal as well in 2-3 months or 6 months or so on and so forth. Yeah? So that doesn't mean, like, you know, you cannot send your paper back to the same journal. You can always incorporate it, make it better, and send it back again. Okay. And finally, good luck. And I always like to show this, like, you know, fortune favors the brave. So take risks. Like, you know, nothing is going to happen. Okay. So if you get rejected, you learn from it. If you get published, so you are happy you've taken the risk. Okay. So, okay, what happens once the reviews get in? Okay. So if the reviews are good, so excellent. Like, I'm very happy for you. Congratulations. So, you know, go and have a nice dinner or something, throw a party. So if the paper gets rejected, so it's not the end of the world. Yeah. So there are other papers that you can send it to. But first, read through the reviews carefully. You know, see whether the reviews are fair or not. You know? If the reviews are fair, you can take the review points constructively to make your paper better. That's all. So, you know, that's basically the positive aspect of it. Yeah? So use that points constructively to make your paper better. So if the reviews are not fair, it is perfectly acceptable for you to send an email or letter to the editor of the journal, and you can also rebut all the reasons why it's novel or not. Yeah. So whether or not they will re-review it, it's up to them. But it's okay. Make your feelings known. You know, stomp your authority. You know, say that, you know what, I'm not going to take this decision lying down. I'll tell you why your decision to reject my paper is wrong. You know, you can do that, but be respectful. Very important. Use good language. Be respectful, and, like, you know, rebut each and every point and tell, like, you know, I believe that the reviewer is not fair because they did not see this paper hours before. They did not consider this point. So explain it carefully and write the letter to the editors, because only the editor will see it. You know, so the editors sometimes they might get swayed and they can say, you know what, let's re-review this paper, like, you know, because this is clear. These are clearly valid points. I'm going to send it to a different reviewer. So sometimes that has happened before as well. There are two cases. That's just me, but I'm sure there are other people, like, you know, who have experienced this. Not for my papers, but, like, you know, for another paper that I submitted to review when I was reviewing. Like, you know, I've seen that the reviewer, the editor said, let's review this paper again. Like, you know, now that they've already been revised, you know, significantly. So, you know, it has happened before. Okay. So yeah, and sometimes you can also ask the editor, say, hey, you know what, I don't think this reviewer knows the subject really well, or he missed certain things. Like, you know, can you please send it to an alternative reviewer, like for a second opinion or third opinion? Okay. And sometimes the editor will acquiesce to that, so it's not a problem. Okay, so those are basically the steps, like, you know, I normally take, you know, when I'm writing journal articles. Yeah. So I've covered the point of view from a writer and from a reviewer as well. Okay, so to conclude, like, you know, I believe writing a journal article, not the performing the research part. Yeah? Performing the research is purely scientific. Okay? But writing an article is a combination of science and art. So, you know, I mean, science is where the results are, and the research, and art is where basically the grammar, the flow, and how you present a certain idea as well. Some people have a flair for it to they can basically, you know, illuminate the idea to another level. So, okay, so that's the artistic part of it. Okay? So, and I know a lot of friends of mine and, like, you know, research that I know that I followed this methodology which I've sort of described here. Similar, yeah, plus minus, like, you know, certain philosophies, but generally they follow the same way of writing papers as well, yeah, for publishing in Q1 journals. Okay, so, and hopefully this is something that, like, you know, you can use as a base and improve it over time. Yeah, so, you know, you might have your own tweaks as well to it, and please, like, you know, share it with me. Yeah, if you have certain ideas on how to make these philosophies better, yeah, please don't feel shy or don't feel afraid to share it, because I want to better myself as well, so I could learn from you guys too as well. Yeah? So, you know, because feedback is very important. You know, so try to use this prescribed methodology of how to write papers. And if you think that something is working better for you, like, you know, and it's that you can augment to this, please let me know. Okay. But the most important thing that I want to impart, like, you know, to the academic researchers, like, you know, to the faculty, more towards the students and somewhat to the young faculty members, is enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy your research and writing journal articles. It's a joy. I mean, like, you know, doing the research is a very joyful thing, and writing the articles you should feel happy to share your work, So I mean, this is something that I truly enjoy, writing. And if you really enjoy what you're doing, I always believe that you can always achieve whatever you want to, your high Q1 papers, recognition from your peers, those things will come automatically. If you're enjoying what you're doing and if you're good at it, all this recognition will come automatically. So don't work towards the recognition. Be passionate about what you're doing first. Be very happy when you're writing, truly enjoy what you're doing, and I believe the rewards will come automatically. Okay, so these are basically some reviewing, so I've reviewed, actually this is a very small sample, of what I've reviewed. So these are the Q1 journals that I've reviewed. There's a lot, basically in my field, these are some of the top journals. So there's few which are still missing, I think, so, but hopefully, I'll get a chance to add it because it's already getting close to the line below. So thank you so much, for spending time and listening to what I've said. I hope it's very useful to you guys. I'm sorry it took longer time than normal too, but I'm sure it's it's a pleasure for me. It's definitely a pleasure for me, and I hope it's a pleasure for you to listen to this talk as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Sumboja.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Thamburaja. It's very nice talk, for a very nice talk.
Thank you.
It's very enlightening, and yep, I hope the participants learn something from this talk. Okay, it's time for question and answers. There are some questions in the chat box. Let me.
Yeah, you want to read them for me? I mean.
Yeah, I think I can read them for you.
So you can pick which ones, the interesting ones. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Oh, maybe this is the first one. From Ihsan Ramli. He's asking about the suggestions for Q1 top tier journals in manufacturing, like they are free to publish, like maybe you can have suggestions from manufacturing.
Yeah, so I guess if you want to know the Q1 journals for manufacturing, I'm assuming you talk for WOS, right? I mean, so trying to find out the section, the JCR. So you need access to JCR basically. So I'm not quite sure whether they have one on manufacturing, but typically look at the manufacturing journals that are out there and see under which category they come to. So then you can always click on the JCR category to see what are the Q1 journals. Of course, there's some of it which are paid and not paid. So this is one thing I want to actually, it's a very important point. That actually a lot of the journals that I publish my work in, I've never paid. I have never paid for any. So there are a lot of articles which are still that even in the Elsevier it's freely published. So yeah, I've not paid yeah. So that you are able to find it, but for manufacturing, I know for a fact this CIRP, they have very. I mean, it's more for proceedings. I think of this manufacturing proceedings. I think a lot of their top tier journals for manufacturing are actually in proceedings. It's called the CIRP, if I'm not mistaken. So take a look at that CIRP. And it's very difficult to publish in those proceedings. And in fact, if you're looking at the fields like computer science, for them, their measure or KPI is actually based on publishing in conferences for computer science, because it's very rapid and fast. For us, it's still journals, and for manufacturing people, it's more on proceedings, if I'm not mistaken, like CIRP, if I'm not mistaken. Please check it out.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, there is one comment in the chat box. They say, see from Ira. Ira says that GRC is not free.
What? Oh, the general citation, JCR, you mean?
Yeah, JCR is not.
JCR is not free. Okay. Yeah, for us it's free. Unfortunately, really sorry. So
yeah, we do not have access for W.
Oh, okay. You don't. Okay, I see. Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
in Indonesia we still use Scopus. Yeah.
Cimego, yeah.
Yeah, Cimego. Yeah.
But as I said, okay, actually that's an important point. That is not a big problem, because see, the number of journals in JCR is a subset of the number of journals in Cimego. So most of the time, if it's a Q1 in JCR, it will be a Q1 in Simego, so don't worry about it. So it's the same, but it's not the other way around, you know. So it's fine. So since you have Simego, that's good enough.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Second question is from Hubert Widyastono from Prasetya Mulia University. Maybe if Hubert is here, maybe he can Hubert can raise Hubert can raise the hands and speak directly to Prof. Prakash. I think it's a nice way to do that because the question is quite long and
quite long. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of questions here. Maybe he can ask you directly. Yeah, I think he's here.
There you go.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay. Good afternoon, Prof. Prakash.
Hi. Good
Thamburaja.
afternoon. Hubert, how are you?
Nice that I can. It's very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Workshop,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Because now I just finished my mini research and preparing for my dissertation for my Dr. degree for entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, I raised some questions there. My first question is regarding the Turnitin score.
Oh, the Turnitin, yeah, to detect plagiarism. Is that right?
Yeah. Correct. And actually, we write the article by ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes that we surprised that when we check the Turnitin, still high. What's happening at there?
So when you say high, what was high? So how many percent was the similarity?
Sometimes even 30%, 30.
50% is very high.
30.
30% is also considered high.
Yeah,
so normally in UKM, what we do is anything more than 10% we get worried. You know? Yeah, 30% is kind of high. You know?
That's why now the question is how we can reduce this score as the lowest as possible. Our target is to be 7.5%.
Yeah. So to do that, you obviously have to rewrite the paper. There's no two ways about it. Yeah, I mean, because a lot of it is also they look at patterns of the papers and all that when they're comparing it. You see. So my only advice there is to basically, you have to basically rephrase the wordings or rewrite the methodology, like, you know, to make it sound different. That's all. Yeah? That's the only way to do it. Unfortunately, there's no easy fix to that. Yeah, only rewriting is the only way to do it.
Okay, so thank you. And then my second question is, to be successful, to be accepted in Q1, is do you think if we only cite references from take for example from Science Direct, which is the reference was issued less than 3 years. Now, of course, I usually I take from Science Direct because I don't have access to lot of science because it's too expensive.
Right. I understand. But you guys have Science Direct, right?
Yes, Science Direct we have. Yeah. So today I only take it from Science Direct. Yeah. And
not necessarily, Hubert. Like actually, most proper journals, like honest journals, they won't restrict where you're citing their papers from. So it just so happens that these journals are good journals and they have already published papers in certain fields, and you have no choice but to cite the papers because it's relevant to your work. See? But there are some journals who actually play games, they say, oh, we want to maintain our impact factors, so please cite certain papers from this same journal, and put it in your references. Yeah. So there are journals which do that, and unfortunately there's some Science Direct journals who do that as well. So what I do is I shun them. I don't send my papers to them anymore, because I believe that is cheating, and it's not the proper way of doing research.
Okay. Thank you so much for your
You're
advice.
welcome.
And then my last question is related to Industrial Marketing Journal.
What journal?
Industrial Marketing Journal.
Industrial Marketing Journal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Of course, most of the I'm not saying most. I saw a lot of the articles from Industrial Marketing Journal. That's also classified in Science Direct.
Okay.
Yeah, because my background is B2B. Actually, I'm business practice
Okay,
and
okay, I got it.
the
Okay,
chemical industry.
okay, okay.
So if we wants to prepare our journal
Hmm.
or our article,
Right.
the things if we are referring from citing from industrial marketing journal,
Okay.
is this we can also get a kind of a to make it easier to get this Q1.
You mean to say if you're citing their
Yeah.
journal, it's be easier?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I said, like some editors they like that, some they don't care. So, if they see you citing their papers from the journal, they're not going to say don't do that. So, yeah. So the problem is when you don't cite some of their journal articles and they tell you to do that. So, and I think that is being dishonest. So, and that is something that I normally frown upon. Like, I don't send my articles to those papers anymore if they keep doing that. So, yeah. But if you do it, cite their papers, like the editors are not going to say no. They don't care. Yeah. Generally, from my editor point of view, they don't care if you are citing papers from their journal. The problem is when sometimes you don't cite papers from their journal, then they might make noise. But most top, in my experience, right? Most of these top Q1 journals, they don't care about it because they know that people are going to cite the papers in their journal. That's what makes them a Q1 journal, because they are very highly cited. Just because one person doesn't do it, like they won't say, oh, you have to do this or you have to do that. They won't do that. Most journals which have class, they won't do that. And these journals tend to be Q1 journals. It's only the Q3 and Q4, the ones that always say, hey, cite our papers because we want to improve the Qs. The Q1 journals, especially the when you have a Q1 journal, the top half of the Q1 journals, they don't normally do that. So, yeah, the bottom half, they will do that because they want to remain in the Q1 bracket. So that's why.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Nice questions. Good questions.
Yes. Thank you.
Oops. Oh God.
Okay. Okay. The third question from Ira. We have limitations to the WOS journals, and Prof. Prakash, do you have any idea how to access it without paying it?
And some how do you access it without paying? That's a good question.
WOS is very strict.
Yeah. So I mean, it's very difficult to find. I've never thought of this. I mean, I took it for granted that I thought most institutions have it, but oh no, I really can't help you there, my dear. So,
Yeah.
Oh God, so no, yeah. But for this Elsevier stuff, like no access to Elsevier. There are a lot of journals nowadays. They're publishing like on open access. You can get papers on the open access. Or sometimes what you get is like, they have preprints, not the final version of the journal on ResearchGate. So those papers you can get. It's the exact same paper on ResearchGate, which are the preprints, like the author's version versus the final version, which are basically copyrighted. So most people nowadays put their preprints on this one, like on ResearchGate. So.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can move on to the next question. And this is from Pak Dasapta Erwin Irawan. If you believe that your work is at the highest quality that you can do, why you still need a high impact journal to publish it? Okay.
Yep.
And
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah.
The quality lies in the work, right? Journal. Okay.
I totally agree. So, yeah, you're right. So the only the reason why we want to publish in a Q1 is for visibility. That's all. So, right? It's easier accessible because normally, for example, if you have very, let's say, if you have scant resources, right? So normally they will always want to subscribe to what are the hot journals in your field, because we'll probably get the most relevant works there. That's all. So it's a lot of it is advertising as well. So, yeah. So you can always publish your good papers in Q3 and Q4. You're absolutely right. In fact, I did start with my during my talk. I said not all good papers are in Q1 and not all bad papers are in Q2. So a lot of society-based papers like ASME, ASCE, Proceedings of Royal Society. Those are journals that have been around for hundreds of years. Together, there are at least 600 years of history between all of them. And they are Q2 journals. Yeah, so you can publish your stuff there. Like, there's no issues at all. So, yeah, and it takes sometimes the reason why the impact factor is low. It's not because the work is bad, because the ideas take time to seep into our minds. And after 2-3 years, now I know this idea makes sense. Now the citations kept. So remember Q1 and Q2 and Q3, it's all only 2-year impact. So it's sort of relatively short term. Yeah. So that's why they have this thing called a 5-year impact factor. And you'll see 5-year impact factor is the most, in my honest opinion, is the most indicative of the type of medium to long term impact and short term. It's a good compromise between short term and long term. 5-year impact factor, and JCI has that. Yeah. So I agree with Gunawan, I totally agree with you, sir. But it's just more for publicity. That's all. For advertisement, because people normally want to look at papers in the Q1 journal. It's easier for them to access. That's all. Yeah. If you have scant resources, and the first thing to look is in a best place. That's also the best place, unfortunately, is the Q1 journals.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Okay,
good question.
Yeah, very good questions. Any more questions from the audience?
I can always send you the slides as well. I think Hubert was asking for the slides.
If not, maybe I can ask questions as well.
Sure.
Okay. I would like to ask about the peer review process. Usually a journal will ask can you suggest 3 reviewers? How do you normally do? Do you suggest 3, or do you put 5, or you put?
When they ask you to do 3, normally what I do is I'll give about 4 probably. So 4. Sometimes I do give 5 if I find another person. Yeah? So typically the strategy to do that is to see a lot of the papers. For example, one way to know is to see in your reference list which are the highest names, the highest instance of names that come out. Those are possible people that you want to review your papers, because there's relevance to your work to them as well. Yeah, so you can find 3 or 4. Yeah, I typically give a bit more. Yeah.
Do you choose person from different regions? I look for someone.
No, I don't. Yeah.
Okay, you just look at
that. I look at the 3 highest names, number of names. Highest. I don't look at regions.
Okay.
So if it's also happen to be in Australia, so be it. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, I think relevance is more important than where you're coming from.
All right. And then how do you let's say the reviewer suggests something that is totally irrelevant to your work? How do you disagree politely?
Okay. So there are multiple ways to do that. You can say basically that that aspect of a work, that aspect of their suggestion is not part of your work's scope. So that is one way to do that. And this is something that you can always consider in your future work. That's it. That's what I would do. If it's not relevant, I would say it's not part of the present scope. It is important. Don't say it's rubbish or anything. So just say your suggestion is important, but it's not part of the present scope of the work. This is something that we can consider in our future work, and then you can always use that to put in your paper, that this is going to be a part of your future work, and then you can highlight it as well. So it shows that you have incorporated some of the ideas. Settled.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. This is one question from anonymous. Okay.
Anonymous,
to publish in Q1 from scratch, I believe this is from early career researchers. Should we collaborate with other well-known scientists, or should we do it research and publish alone?
This is a good question. So typically when you're publishing, you would normally work with your advisor first, right? I'm assuming you're a PhD student or maybe an earlier career researcher. So if you want to publish Q1 from scratch, it's not a problem if you actually can do it alone too. In fact, my first paper that I published as a career academician was a single author paper in a Q1 journal. Because that time you are new, right? You have nobody to collaborate with, and you want to stamp your authority in the field. So you will basically, have nobody to turn to except for yourself. In fact, my first paper I wrote in 2005 by myself. It's a single author paper. So,
wow.
So there's nothing, bizarre about it. If you're lucky enough to collaborate with well-known scientists, it's good. But if not, you can do it yourself too. I've done it myself. Speaking from my own experience.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions from the audience? Okay. Okay. Maybe I while waiting, and maybe I can ask more questions. Like I believe some of I think some of the audience here are young faculty members. Like maybe they just start their careers. Like what are the tips that you have from some young faculty members? Because young faculty members, they tend to have a lot of administrative work.
Yeah, I know that's a very horrible thing. It should be the other way around. Normally, we should free our young faculty members from administrative work. They should be concentrating on research and teaching only. But if you're unfortunate enough to do it, to be dragged into a bit more administrative stuff, you can always try to collaborate with another professor in your department, like with their students. That will definitely give you a leg up as well. Yeah, so try to collaborate with your colleagues. Like typically a senior guy, they'll have students. They'll have a lot of students going to them. So and they'll have a lot of good students going to them. So you need good students to help you. So for these earlier career researchers, try to attach yourself, and work with another professor in your same field, and they will normally supply you with the good students, because they'll have always the first access to the best students. There's no doubt about it. And of course, you'll all publish together. So it's not a big deal. You see? So at least your work gets done too. So you get to do your administrative stuff, and you also get to do research because you got a good student working here. So you don't want to be saddled with a student which is also still trying to find their feet as well. So normally these big professors, they will have links to the best students. Yeah, that's how it is.
Okay. There is Pak Yuli. Do you have any questions? I think.
Apakah for important information?
Hi.
As you know that we publish in what you want to know is tough, not very good. Sometimes we receive both tough comments, sometimes like that. Sometimes as you say, 30% constructive comments. How does it feel? What is maybe there is an appropriate time that we can think that we can struggle in this field, or maybe it is better to move to other field.
Yeah.
What is the best option? Thank you.
What's the last one? What is the timeline?
What is the appropriate time or?
Okay, I see. Yeah. There is actually, I don't think there's an appropriate time, because I feel, for example, right? Let's say you get rejected from a journal, and you feel that that, hey, I can make my journal better, my article better. I can beef it up a bit. You can always send it back again, you, as immediately as you as fast as you repair the paper. So you don't have, there's no wound, there's no waiting period, there's no grace period, or like a cooling off time or anything. You can always send it immediately. If you think you have incorporated the ideas or the problems in the paper as fast as possible, you can send it out. There's no issues. Yeah, I don't think there's a period like a minimum amount of period. No. But my suggestion is to make sure that you reread the paper and see that you have incorporated all the issues and rectified all the issues, and then resend it. There's nothing to stop them from reviewing the paper again. So, you can always send it because it's relevant to the journal. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. Because sometimes I feel that it is still work to struggle in this journal. But sometimes I think, maybe it's better to find another journal.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's no, as I said, there's no dearth of journals. Yeah, you can always, if you feel, especially if the reviews are unfair, send it to another journal. If the reviews are fair, then you repair your article according to those points, and then you can also send it to the same journal, or you can send it to another journal. Not a problem. Yeah. Thankfully, there are a lot of journals. So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can take one last question before we close this section.
That's
any more questions from the audience? Kalau enggak, ya udah. think there is no more questions from the audience. I think it's almost 3 p.m. here, and I think Prof. Prakash has another appointment after this. Yeah, right? Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you so much.
Professor Prakash Thamburaja for. Yeah, I think with that we will end this sessions, and I will pass to our MC.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Prakash.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Afriyanti. And thanks to Prof.Dr. Prakash for the information and knowledge which have been given to us and made useful for us. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, finally we get to the last session of this event. Okay, sorry. Okay, finally we get to the last session of this event, that is closing. As the master of ceremony, I'm sorry if I have made a mistake. And once again, thanks for Professor Dr. Prakash as the speaker.
Thank you so much.
And all the participants to joining our workshop. And for your information, don't forget to join the second part of this workshop. Will be held on Friday, 11 November 2022. And thanks for your attention. See you the next workshop.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof.